Hey, what's up? So, another Axe manga magazine spotlight, which is very overdue because I've done a couple of Gara ones now recently. Got to move on to some Axe again. So, this is volume 25, issue 25, 2002 February, with a Toshio Saeki cover. And if you notice, I'm using this little postcard from Imai Arata to just censor the cover, which I might have to do over the course of this book. So this specific issue is a sort of special feature. It's called Toshio Saeki Revisited. So it has a couple of short stories by Saeki plus an interview with him. But over the course of this issue, I think it might be a bit of a shorter one just because a lot of the chapters in this one are continuations. So we might as well just get started with it. So here is the back. I think this is a Kasuma Shiro. No, this is a Hiromi Haraguchi story. But what we have is with the older issues of of Axe, we have color fold-out pages. So this is only with older issues and very rarely in newer issues. I will probably have to censor this, but here you go. I may put up just the full one on Instagram, but yeah, probably censor it on here on YouTube. And here is the table of contents. We have a ton to go through, so many to go through today, but we start off with let me use my postcard to censor. Honestly, this will be a bit hard to censor, so what I might do instead is I'll just show the full thing and I'll censor it after. So this is a picture of Toshio Saeki at his solo exhibition in Harajuku in 1972. So just to let you know, Saeki unfortunately passed away in 2019, but so this was in 2002. So what we have in this interview is actually, so we've got, of course, Saeki. We've also got Yoshikazu Ebisu and Yoshihiro Yonegawa, which Yonegawa is the moderator of this interview. He's also a manga critic and author. And of course, Ebisu, Heta Uma mangaka. So throughout the interview, they talk about a bunch of stuff. They, with Saeki, if you're not sure of who he is, he's got a cult following. His style combines sort of, it's described as like shunga or erotic art, yokai, and Western art together. But for example, some of the things he talks about in this interview is how like the loss he experienced after his wife had passed away, the loss of motivation, how he got into his style of drawing. So Saeki had actually, like during high school, his friends asked him to draw shunga. So that's sort of how he got into it. He also did like advertising work as well, and then transitioned into, of course, the illustrations that we know him for. But he also briefly talks about manga as well. Talks about how he read like those Kashihon series, or no, not series, but like magazines like Kage and Machi in them. But yeah, quite it's not too long of an interview, but we've also got a written short story called The Nun and the Monk. But we'll go through the two other stories that we have here. This one is called The Genius Bakabon. I'm not really sure what that translates to, but the story is written by Kou Shintaro, which we've seen in Gara issues in like the 70s. And the art is, of course, by Saeki. And this one's an interesting one. So this guy, he's woken up, he's concerned, he has no erection. So he sets out to fix that and does a couple of different things. But there's a note here on the side that says the original was lost. So this is like a reproduction edition of the story. And yeah, this is how it ends. The next story is called Magojiro on a Round Moonlight Night. Moonlight Night. Moonlit Night? Whatever it is. So, weird one. Not too sure what to make of it. She saves this creature called the Magojiro from being bullied. Here he is. Maybe it's someone she knows, but can't show that. Guess they get into some conflict over here. And can't show any of that. Nope. And I love this little panel here of just the umbrella. Yeah, not too sure what happens here, but cool to have. This is the only book I have where I actually have any like manga of Saeki. I only have one other Saeki book, and that's just the Red book, which is just an art book published by Cornelius. So yeah, that was the Toshio Saeki section. Now we'll move on to the other stories. So the first one we'll actually skip over because it's a continuation. This is called Aiden and Titi 32, chapter 3, by Miura Jun. So some info about Miura Jun. Haven't read anything from them yet, but they debuted in Garo in 1980. Their work was rejected many times by Kazuhiro Watanabe, who I've shown off before. He was the editor-in-chief at the time, but Watanabe did Heta Uma manga. Heta Uma manga. The one I showed off is called Kodro. And I forgot which video exactly. It's not my favorite, but that's just some backstory. And the first time that Miura actually encountered Garo was when he was in elementary school. He was actually sick. He was at home with a fever, and his dad was supposed to go out and get Com. So Com was the manga magazine by Osamu Tezuka, but he mistook it and actually brought home a Garo issue instead of Com. So that was pretty funny. And yeah, Miura ended up serializing in Garo and X. So that was pretty cool. Full circle moment for him. The next one we have is called Water Resistance by Kawai Katsuo. Interesting one. So we've got a girl and her sister. Her sister's got this type of water resistant skin. She wants to be her sister, and I guess she shows her how to do that by, I have to censor that, by pretty much letting the blood flow through her body. Then they become water resistant. Interesting. I don't really know what the point of that story was, but interesting either way. Next one, Saint Alexander of Hiroshima by Toranosuke Shimada. So Shimada has done, I think, one story that has been translated to English, Robo Sapiens, I think. This series, I'm not too sure if this exactly is like a one-shot or a series itself, but it follows like a firefighter who was the only survivor in his team from Chernobyl, and he goes to Japan to get some tests done. But yeah, Robo Sapiens is, I believe, in English, the only one in English from Toranosuke, but he did win like an Axe Award or something like that early on. But his art style is pretty interesting. Very clean lines and shadows. Well, it's quite a long one as well. You know what I think of his art? His art is, to me at least, if it was ever adapted into like an animated work, would look really cool. If they remain true to his art style and not change anything. I think the lines that he uses and the overall composition works really well for that. But yeah, so the next one is a part 2, unfortunately. This is by Mitsuhiko Yoshida, which I've shown recently on the channel with the Day My Feet Reached the Pedals book. This is a part 2, so not too sure what exactly happens here, but we'll go through and flip through this. Again, I gotta censor a bunch of things. That's annoying. But that is the nature of Axe and Gara and Gekiga and everything else, I guess. This is actually cool. The first time I've seen, this is Tani Hiroji. So this is the first time I actually saw what he looks like. It's an interview with him where it was related to, because this was in 2002, he had a new release called Kaiketsu Shinkiro, which is a collection of his Garo stories. But yeah, it goes through and talks about that short story collection. They talk about his influences and Lovecraft, because he has done like a story or two related to Lovecraft. So that was pretty cool. Here's a bigger picture of him. And then we've got a little section here that's like new rock and soft rock analog selection. So that's pretty cool. Next one, this issue's a special one as well, because this here is the debut chapter of Seigitai, or the Justice Core by Goto Yuka. A very fun Heta Uma series. But yeah, having the debut work of Goto Yuka, I didn't even know that, like, before I bought this because, you know, it was the Toshio Saeki issue, and shout out Sean from Japan Book Hunter. That's where I got this specific issue from. But yeah, didn't even know that the debut chapter of Seigitai was here. So that's cool. Have yet to finish it off, just got the one volume left until I finish the series. So next one is just another continuation again, a story called Fair Wind by Mitsumoto Yoshiharu. This is a chapter 10, but we've got some crazy stuff happening. I have no idea what's happening with the eyes, but interesting. Alright, so this next one is called Moka-chan's Lessons by Okada Shigehiro. And here's Moka-chan, she's 5. And the story is just her learning weird lessons from weird situations. Like she's not getting the right lessons from all of these weird situations. It's pretty unorthodox the way she thinks. And she's got a comment every single time on the bottom, but it was kind of funny. Never heard of the mangaka before, actually. But yeah, she's quite cute. And we end off with a pretty detailed panel and a UFO flying overhead. So the next one we have is, this is by Nakano Shizuka, titled Cinnamon. And this is a one-shot, so it's a self-contained story where we have two girls here. One approaches the other with Cinnamon. They get close, and one day they go to explore a building that is set to be demolished. So inside of it, they find, well, like they're chilling for a bit, but as they're spinning round and round, they see this sort of pastry, and it's a bit confusing. It's like on the magical realism side of things, because the girl may have been, this girl here, who knows if she was real or not, but she could be like a spirit that maybe represents the building, because there's comparisons of it being like a death row prisoner, since it's going to be destroyed. She brought her to this place and they, you know, had fun. Once she woke up, there was nothing but pigeons and she disappeared. So who knows? But Shizuka does a lot of these magical realism stories. It's kind of like a trademark in some of her stories. So I do recommend her stuff, although none of it has been translated yet into English. But her art style is, if you see her art style, I think you'd notice and recognize her straight away. It's very distinct. But always gotta love some Nakano Shizuka. So we'll move on to a story by Ikuko Hatoyama, another female mangaka who has that sort of distinct style. Like when I think of Nakano Shizuka, I also think of Ikuko as well, because she has very, like, her character designs are very easily noticeable as well. But this is called Drops of Green or Blue Beads? Green Beads? It's owl, I think. But yeah, it's a continuation of a story, so we'll flick through this. Maybe a war story? No. Maybe. She has a lot of dialogue in her stories though. Ikuko. Yeah. And this is a cool one. This here is a story by from Nishioka Kyoudai, but it's actually the epilogue to the Journey to the End of the World book that they have. So Journey to the End of the World is like a long series that was serialized in acts. This is the last chapter, which if you don't want spoilers, then you can skip to the next story. But I have read this before. It's a really good story actually, and I really loved the ending because we have this sort of thing where we have slowly the main character fades out, and it's just saying ganbare, ganbare, you know, you can do it, until it just ends off. So relative to the story, a great ending. Maybe if you haven't read it, it might be kind of nonsensical, but really fitting ending, I think. So we got Red Guitar, Blue Guitar by Anzai Hajime, these illustrations that you sometimes see in the early issues. Move on to a no, it's not the one. I think there was the one where it was like, here we go. This is a post-war erotic manga history article, part 13, by Yoshihiro Yonegawa, who was the moderator to the interview. This is him over here. Yeah, so he does these sort of articles. This one specifically on post-war ero manga, which is interesting. Got some more articles here and there. And the next one we have, I don't know if I've shown this off before. I know definitely in early issues they have a ton of these. This is Torn Apart Sadness by Tsugawa Satoko. It's like a sequential silence manga following this monkey dude where you read down through the pages. Yeah, very short ones. This next one is it's a weird title, The End of Children, The Cries of Children, something like that, by Fukumitsu Shigeyuki. This one I can't really show too much of because it's a pretty uncomfortable story. Didn't really like it actually, despite liking Fukumitsu's work. It's about a boy who like finds interest in a high school classmate, or like a senior of his, and what happens is that he's a pretty rude boy, but the senior, I'm trying to remember what actually happens, but he accidentally injures her he's like waiting outside a tent while she's doing it with another guy, and she accidentally he hits her on accident, but she comes back, doesn't know what happened, but he's pretty rude and just calls her an idiot. Yeah, I don't know what the point of that was, but he's a pretty disgusting guy. But yeah, so now we move on to the last story, called Hello Baby by Toshio Hagiwara. So one of my favorite discoveries of Axe, in the early issues at least, is this mangaka here. So Hagiwara, they won the Encouragement Award for the second Axe Awards, and they published in Axe from 2000 to 2007. And in like one of the descriptions from Takoshare, they compare some of his detail to like Miyanishi Keizo. So what it is in this story at least is it's a story where this rich family gets a weird alien baby. And for Hagiwara's stuff, you can it's such the character designs are so ugly in the best way, in that I can't take my eyes off of them. They're so ugly that I don't know, it's just really, it kind of reminds me sometimes of Meat Cake Bible by Dame Darcy, which I haven't read yet, but I've just seen artworks from her. I do have the physical book, but I just haven't touched it yet. But the amount of detail combined with how ugly these characters look makes it really fun to read. And like this baby, an eyeball pops out of it, and it's just like a weird scenario where these characters are just, I don't know, I don't even know what they're doing towards the end of everything, but it's just so absurd, the art style. But I don't know if they've ever had a tankobon put out. I know they've done self-published stuff, but it's just funny because, you know, when you think of Minishi Keizo, it's detailed beauty. But when I think of Hagiwara, it's detailed ugliness. Which again, every time I say ugliness, it's not an insult at all. I love their art style. I love their character design so much because it's so engaging and so like addicting to look at. But I should get onto more of my early issues because I really want to find out and read more of Hagiwara stuff. But yeah, so that's the last story. Oh, we've got some stuff by I forgot his name, Kataoka, but I don't really read his stuff anyways because it's a bit too raunchy for me. And then got some very brief Nemoto Takashi chapters. So yeah, and that will be the end of that. Let me see if there's anything else there. Just to note, this is like just advertising for Cherry Boys, for Kondo Yoko. Don't believe so. Although I do know there are 2 King Terry illustrations at the end, which I will find now. And I will have to censor. So here's I can't really show much. One of the King Terry illustrations and another one here. So Flamingo Studio, there you go. And we've got here Futago no Oyaji, the gag series by Shiryagai Kotobuki, and this was the tankobon that Tani Hiroji was interviewed for. This one here, Keiketsu Mirage. I think that's how you say it. Right, and that was the end of that issue there. So overall, on the quantity side of things, less that I could read because of those continuing stories, but the highlights I think of this entire thing was, of course, you know, it's a Saeki issue, but on top of that, I really liked the fact that I went into this not knowing that this was the debut chapter of Seigitai by Goto Yuka. We also had the Journey to the End of the World epilogue. Really loved the Hagiwara. I think the Hagiwara story is my favorite from this entire issue, just because of how crazy and absurd it is. But yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed this one. I just realized I didn't censor the front with my Imai postcard, but we'll have to do that in post. But yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one.